Hello. How are you all doing? Good. Looking forward to lunch. You can see I work as a consultant in my own company. Before I came in, a lady asked me, was I nervous about speaking? And I said no. And she said, well, what are you doing in the women's toilets? So try to stay with me because we're surrounded by such a wealth of knowledge and intelligence, and it's actually a very humble experience to be here learning about what's happening around the world, and also to be able to share some of my ideas with you. A little bit about myself. I got involved in business excellence and quality management many years ago, and it came out of becoming a manager at a very young age. I was 28. I was appointed as a first manager of a group of about 30 to 35 staff. And I discovered after a short while that I was actually a terrible manager. People didn't like me. And I got very concerned about this because we spend a lot of time in our work life in 8 hours a day, a third of our lives. And my own values were that I wanted to be happy in my work experience. And so I started to look around, and this was back in the late 80s. I started to look around for ways that I could change my management behaviour, because I was a product of the organisations that I had come through, and I had picked up the behaviours of the people that I had been subservient to. And I came across total quality management, and not long after that, the business excellence framework, the Baldrige criteria. And I've been very pleasantly reminded of the fantastic journey that we had in that organisation over the next 11 years by a number of people that have come up and talked to me and introduced themselves over the past 2 or 3 days and go, hey Brent, how are you? And I'm going like, who are you? And they remembered me from what we did in this organisation. The company was called Westland Laundry. And when we got the Baldrige thing really happening, everything changed and worked better in that organisation. All the things you would dream about having, good things that would happen. Staff turnover going down. I went from 100% staff turnover in the first year I was there to 0% 7 years later. Injuries went down, sales went up, profit went up, customer satisfaction went up. And so it was a wonderful journey, and we won 5 consecutive Baldrige-based awards over 5 years. And this was with the blue-collar set of workers. And in '97, we won one of the National Business Excellence Awards here in New Zealand. And the year after that, they made a video of our story, and people still remember that video. It's like 14 years ago, so it was really impressive. So I come from a background of business excellence, and what I wanted to talk to you about today was about culture. And I'm steeped in this framework. This has been my life for some time. And there's a quote there that's come straight out of Baldrige, and the responsibility is with senior leadership to develop a culture. But we hear this word about culture, and it doesn't. What does it mean? It just gets tossed around. What is culture? And after, how many of you have trained as evaluators in the Baldrige system? So about, I don't know, maybe nearly a quarter of the people here. That's great. So for those of you that haven't done that, I encourage you to do it. It's like a mini MBA. It's a wonderful experience. What I found going into organisations and evaluating them was that people would open up to me as a complete stranger evaluator in the organisation, and you do a lot of interviews on the site visit to validate and verify what the applicants of the awards are put together for you to review. And some of you had this experience where people will start being brutally honest with you about the leadership and the management and start offloading to you as an evaluator. Anyone had that experience? Peter? Michael? Mike? And I was fascinated by it. I thought, why are they talking to me? What am I meant to do with this information, and why is it not already happening in this organisation? They obviously thought they were good enough to enter the awards, and a number of these organisations went on to be recognised winning awards, and this stuck with me that these people were not happy. And I've had the good fortune of having worked for some long projects with large organisations, and one in particular, the New Zealand Fire Service here in New Zealand, who've been recognised for the awards twice over, it was 2004, 2009, bronze and silver level award. And my thinking I'm going to share with you today came out of that experience, because we got so far down the journey of being a high performance organisation, helping the senior management team there. And these are the values from the criteria. And culture is affected by all the ones that I've underscored there. Visionary leadership, organisational personal learning, value of employees and partners, management by fact, etc. But it doesn't tell you what culture is actually about. So I've built a model I'm going to share with you today. Actually going to give you some takeaways that you can use. You can go create a mini action plan for your own organisation. So we're going to look at these things today. The puzzle, can you systematise culture? And I'm a process person. You're people and process people. I'm a process person. And I'm always thinking about how you can systemise stuff. Now, one of the speakers, Robert Cole, talked about in Toyota is quality part of DNA. Well, is culture part of an organisation's DNA? I think you can make culture part of DNA by actually systematising it. And I'm going to, lucky speaking today, because I've been able to listen to a number of presenters over the past 2 days, and there have been a number of experts that have spoken about elements that are part of the model I'm going to share with you. So this is not new. It's not rocket science, and I know that because I'm not a rocket scientist, so it's easy for you. There's a very clever Kiwi marketer who branded the term, branded the company name 9 out of 10 experts. So he was able to say whenever he went and did a presentation anywhere that 9 out of 10 experts endorsed what I say today, because it was him. But I'm actually going to refer to some real experts today. Do you think that charisma of leaders is something to do with developing a high-performing culture? Someone like put their hands up if they think that. Gave me the slide a little earlier, too early. Do you think charisma is important for a high-performing culture? No. Yes, no, I gave you the slide too early, didn't I? This was a study done by Messrs. Pillai and Mendel, and they have proven by studying this, looking at 30,000 newspaper reports about what's happening in a company and how the leaders, the senior leaders, were perceived within that organisation and by the public. And what they discovered was what you see on the chart here, that when the leaders were shown to produce a stable profit or a crisis turnaround, their leaders became more charismatic. So I just wanted to get rid of that myth if you think that culture is about charisma and leaders, because charisma is created by the people in the organisation. It's not something that we were born with or we can create. I mean, obviously hard work and making the right decisions can make you more charismatic, so that's the key to that. And the next, the next myth, or we've heard a lot about values, and do values fix this? Do they make a high-performing culture? They actually don't. they're a very essential part of it, but if you just put together a set of values and promulgate them well, it's not going to make a high-performing culture in an organisation. It's a cog in the machine. What I'm interested in is what's going on in people's minds. What are they thinking about at the senior leader level, but also at the operational front end of an organisation. And my studies over the past 3 years or so have really got me interested in neuro-linguistic programming. What is it? What's the self-talk going on with people in organisations? It's about me learning about myself as well. But leaders need to really understand what's going on for them before they can start talking about values. And in working with organisations who are on this improvement journey, I get the opportunity to sit around tables of executives, and somewhere in the boardroom or in the foyer there will be a sign that promotes their values, and you get these sorts of words: trust, truth, respect, honesty and integrity. And they're all rubbish, really, aren't they? Just words like that. Because if I had you all write down now what your perception or belief is about the word honesty or truth, what you write down will be the sum of your life experience. Every moment, every interaction with everybody you've ever had will have framed up your perspective on trust and truth and honesty. It's very negligent and naughty for senior leaders to put these words up and go, there, do that. Because they don't behave that way with each other, which is why as an evaluator you get to see people going, well, yeah, these are our values, but actually I think that I don't trust senior leaders. Or you get senior leaders saying, actually I'm not sure I trust her or him. And so what they haven't done is aligned their values and aligned their thinking. But to do that you have to understand yourself. There's a study that was done by, in a book written by Dan Early about honest truth about dishonesty. And I like this idea that social contagion, dishonesty can become a norm when group practices are open. Organisations don't have that discussion amongst themselves about, do I understand myself? And therefore, do we understand each other? So when people start saying, we believe in quality, we believe in quality, we believe in quality, it becomes a chant or a mantra in an organisation. It's just a layer, it's just a veneer, it's not actually part of the DNA of an organisation. And so this white lie is promulgated, and if it's good enough to be dishonest about quality, then you know, you've worked in organisations, you'll be working in one now, then everything else is up for your own interpretation. And an organisation won't progress well if that isn't addressed. So this final point is the role of senior leaders to create a culture that's reflective of genuine and real values. And thus, all people recruited in an organisation should be evaluated for their values aligned before they're recruited. And we've heard David Parmenter talk about this, about making sure you put a lot of resource into the recruitment at the top of the cliff rather than trying to pick up the pieces at the bottom later. And I find that organisations that I've worked with and evaluated that human resources have often corralled themselves away from the rest of the organisation, and they start following their own best practice, but they're not necessarily serving the organisation for what they need. And so HA have a very, very important role to play to ensure that they are understanding what the values of the organisation are before they start recruiting people. It's not okay to recruit somebody on their technical capabilities and then bring them in and in the induction process go, these are our values. It's too late, you just made a major mistake. So organisations need to try and avoid doing that. So I'm going to get to my model now, and I'm calling this like the shield, the cultural synergies. There's some parts of this model which we're going to go through now. And this is my definition of what cultural synergy would look like. An organisational state where all people and various stakeholders of various other groups consistently operate in ways that demonstrate a shared set of values and behaviours. And there are a number of other things that define what that would look like. The organisation is successful across all result areas. I'm talking about the Aldridge framework, those categories of results. That they have a budget for improving culture and the strategy has goals for culture. I don't see that in organisations. I don't know whether any of you have. That culture is put there as a thing that must be proactively managed. So it does become systematised, it does become part of the DNA of the organisation. And that they invest in it. Formal methods are used to gather data from the culture-related processes. People's behaviours are proven to be consistent with the culture results and trends over time. Human resources are responsible to recruit people who are a good fit in the organisation. And NLP is essential training for leaders, trainers and decision makers. There's a quote there from Ralph Waldo Emerson. To different minds, the same world as a hell and a heaven. So you can't assume as a leader. Are we using sound here?
Yes.
Yeah. Not now. Okay. To different minds, the same world as a hell and a heaven. So you need to know what the experiences of your people are as they come into your organisation's door every day. And to do that, you need to be understanding what is going on in your mind, your layers of thinking, to be able to lead the people. So I'm going to go through the parts of the model now. And I've broken this down as the critical processes and the quality control for each part. So the first part is the communication models and tools are agreed for use by leaders. So the critical process here is that you have an internal communications process. How many organisations here have a formal communications plan or communications strategy? Just a show of hands. 1, 2, 3, hands up high. So less than 10%. That's not very good. Many of the communications plans that are developed are outward looking. So they're looking at how do we interact with our customers, how do we promote our products and services, how do we push our brand out there, and it's all outward looking. This concept is about having an internal communications plan, and that you track the deployment of that plan and you report on variation. As an example there, Chief Executive leads staff meetings and satisfaction-wise employees is tracked. So the second part of the model is the critical process. So the critical process here is that an organisation will map every interaction that the senior leaders have with each other and other important stakeholders. So you identify and manage that proactively. The purpose of the forums have to be identified. It's not meetings for meetings' sake. That the behaviours that are required in those various interactions are identified, and there'll be different behaviours for different forums. Chief Executive is talking to a shareholder meeting, or talking to line staff, or talking to his or her peers, then the behaviours required will vary, and they can be identified and changed. So you can systematise that in an organisation. And the style of the interaction is determined to ensure consistency. So it's about training and communication styles. This is a nice big screen, so you should be able to read this. This is an extract from communications plan, a matrix, and so you can see that there's the purpose of the communique, and so you have these here, and this matrix can grow to 100 lines or 150 lines. And then across here, identifying the owner, the initiator, who's sending it, the medium or the channel, who the recipients are, what the frequency should be, Do you have policies? And then why are you doing this? Why is this activity happening? It needs to be purposeful, that you're looking at the strategic output, the strategic outcome or goal, and that you have a measure. But these are the parts to do with culture, that you are formally and deliberately putting the value into this map and also the behaviour that's to be modelled. Very simple to create these, it's just a matter of putting the effort in. The third part of the model is the agreed behaviours, and these are the critical processes. You have a code of conduct that you identify the appropriate range of acceptable behaviours and the decision-making rules. We're going to look at this a little bit again later. And here we have NLP again, about understanding how people are thinking before you endeavour to change the way they react to events, and before they make decisions. So recruiting well and monitoring and training. The quality control is around formally monitoring behaviours using peer reviews or surveys and reporting and investigating on variance. Peter mentioned before about senior leaders being resistant about feedback because why? They have some right, they don't need to get that feedback or what. It's lonely at the top. People have fewer ways of finding out if they're doing okay, and people can get fragile the higher they get up in an organisation and not want to know if they're not doing well because they're on a career path and they think they're successful, and they may be outwardly, but we want to know what's going on inside the individual. So peer reviews and surveys need to happen frequently and often, and simple methods for getting feedback. So the quality control, formally monitoring behaviours, neuro-linguistic programming, again, is essential. So if you're training your people to understand. And there was a number of you would have heard Cindy Lauren just talking, and I was hoping she would use this quote because I really like it from her. And on her website it was saying, thinking about thinking results in results. So thinking about thinking. This is what NLP is about. It's about what is going on in my mind. It's not just one thought. All of you sitting here now are not going, I'm taking in everything that Brent's talking about. There are layers of thoughts, and those thoughts are built up on your life experience. Some of you will be off till tomorrow, or still on yesterday, or thinking about lunch, and it's happening simultaneously. Quote there from Bruce Lee, as you think, so shall you become. We want people and organisations to align the way they think. And you can't brainwash people or program them to be robotic in their behaviour, but you can recruit the right type of people who already have the values set that are aligned with what you want to achieve in your organisation. So those sort of three bubbles that come together, and where these cross over, where there's an interaction, the modelling of behaviour, how do you track this? It's about peer review. You'd be giving regular feedback to each other about behaviour. And there are many ways you can do that. I mean, obviously in small organisations, if you have people working together in the same office, you can talk to each other. In large organisations, you may want to automate that somehow. Some examples from award winners. I think there was a sewage processing plant somewhere in America that I learned this from Mark Brown. They had hundreds of blue-collar workers working there, and each day when they checked out left the site, they had a selection of 3 marbles that they could put red, green, blue. They could put a marble in one of 3 buckets to say whether they'd had a good day, an okay day, or a bad day. And someone counted the marbles at the end of the day, and if the ratio was going out of whack, if the bad day marbles were building up, that was a trigger to go and investigate, go down to talk to people and say, what's going on? Another example is an organisation where before they energy saving policy, turn your computer off at the end of the day, lots of people with desks with computers to rate their day. You couldn't turn your computer off until you filled in the survey, rate your day. Overnight, that data from hundreds and hundreds of employees was crunched. When the chief executive and other senior executives turned their computers on in the morning, the first thing that came up, and they could not avoid this or work around it, were the results from yesterday. How people were feeling, and they could drill down into that, right into departmental areas and teams to see if something was swerving and changing. And so you can track behaviours. You can have a system about that and be honest about it. Consistency of use, when you're looking at how the communications models are working together along with behaviours, tracking that formally as well. So having the measures, people talked about measures, you need to have the KPIs around culture. What is ethical leadership and communication? It's the crossover between communications models and the senior management forums. HR need to determine the necessary elements of what ethical behaviour means. You have to assess the understanding of that, train people, and again, we'll come back to recruitment, and promulgate the determination of ethical behaviour and monitor the communications plan. This is extract from the notes out of the Baldridge criteria about what they say is ethical leadership. And you see the word in there, conform to the organisation's moral and professional principles of conduct. So they're talking about high-performing, world-class organisations do this. And senior leaders should act as role models for these principles of behaviour. As you think, so you become, the people at the top need to be exemplary in what they want the organisation to adopt for their values. Yep. 2 slides. So, what happens with business rules? By modelling the right behaviour and aligning the values and having people understand what's going on in their own minds, therefore dictates what they do and how they interact with people. These can be built into these decision diamonds in your business rules. So if you have to put a stronger focus on suppliers or customers or safety, you can automate this through some computer modelling, or you can train people in what the priority is of the day. The decision is never black and white, because again it's about who you are as an individual. This is the model in its completion. You've seen the component parts. I bought 20 or 30 copies, which I would like to hand out so you can take this away. It's difficult to sketch that in pad. So if we get all these things right, if we get the behaviours right, and we get the communication model right, and we get the forums right, and you track these things, you peer review, you measure, you survey, you will get an improved culture. That's the take-home list. That's the to-do list. That's the model that you can put into your organisation. I won't go there because we're out of time. Thank you for listening.